أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Lesson number 98, Surah Al-Anfal, ayah number 1 to 19. Surah Al-Anfal is a Madani surah. What does that mean? That it was revealed after the Prophet ﷺ migrated from Mecca to Medina. Surah Al-A'raf, the surah that we learned right before Surah Al-Anfal, was a Makki surah. And before that, Surah Al-An'am was also a Makki surah. But before that, we learned Surah Al-Ma'idah, which was a Madani surah. And Surah Al-Baqarah and Surah Ali Imran, both of them are also Madani. So now again, we're going to study a surah which is Madani. Surah Al-Anfal is a Madani surah and it was revealed after Surah Al-Baqarah. In the previous surah, Surah Al-A'raf, we learned about several nations who were destroyed. Why were they destroyed? Because of their disbelief in the prophets who were sent to them. And also because of how they dealt with the Prophet of Allah. In this surah, we will learn about how the mushrikeen of Makkah, how they had dealt with the Prophet ﷺ, and how the Sahaba, those who believe in the Prophet ﷺ, dealt with him. How they behaved towards the Prophet ﷺ. This surah, Surah Al-Anfal, it was revealed in the context of the Battle of Badr. When was it revealed? In the context of the Battle of Badr, which took place on 17th of Ramadan, the second year after Hijrah. And the Battle of Badr marked the first victory of the Muslims against the mushrikeen, against the mushrik forces, against the forces of disbelief. In Bukhari, it is reported that Abdullah ibn Abbas, he said that Surah Al-Anfal was revealed in the context of the Battle of Badr. And the Battle of Badr, as you know, was the first battle that was fought between the Muslims and the mushrikeen. It was the first major battle. And remember that before the Battle of Badr, there were minor skirmishes, minor combats between the Muslims and the mushrikeen. However, this was the first major battle. In this surah, several events and aspects of the battle are mentioned, such as the causes of the battle, the results of the battle. And in this surah, the rules of conduct for fighting in the way of Allah are also laid down, as well as the rules for distributing any of the spoils of war, any of the booty that the Muslims may obtain by winning the battle. Similarly, in this surah is mentioned as to how the prisoners of war should be treated by the Muslims. And it is stressed in the surah that victory, success, comes only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it comes as a reward for faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is not by virtue of the superiority of your numbers, of your arms, of your resources, but rather victory, help is only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What happened in the Battle of Badr? The Battle of Badr, as I mentioned to you earlier, it was the first major battle that was between the disbelievers and the Muslims. And in this battle, a small band of Muslims, a very few number of Muslims, which were some 300, according to some there were about 313 believers, the Sahaba who fought with the Prophet ﷺ in the Battle of Badr. And remember that the Muslims, they had recently migrated to Medina. And half of the population of Medina was of immigrants now. So many people were immigrants, and you can imagine any place in which there are immigrants. Initially, there is a lot of financial crisis. There is shortage of food, supplies, different types of supplies. So people are struggling financially. Because of this reason, the Muslims who went to battle at Badr, they were also of very limited resources. Very limited resources. And on the other hand, the mushrikeen, they were more than 1,000. More than 1,000 in number. So basically the Muslims were to fight the enemy that was 3 times their own number. 3 times their own number. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala assisted the Muslims and He granted them victory. and the Muslims came back to Medina victorious. And it was a victory that clarified to the people that what the Prophet ﷺ was preaching was the haqq. The Muslims were on the haqq, because it was impossible that 300 people who are barely armed, they are fighting against an army that is 3 times their own number. Which is why the day of Badr is also known as Yawmul Furqan, the day of criterion, because it distinguished, it clearly showed as to who was right and who was wrong. That Muhammad ﷺ, what he was preaching was correct, it was the truth, and what the mushrikeen was doing, that was batil, it was incorrect. Now, upon victory of this battle, the Muslims were victorious. Obviously, the Muslims acquired war booty. And up until now, in Arabia, the custom was that whenever you go to battle, whatever you get your hands on, that's yours. Everybody would just take whatever they could get a hold of, and it belonged to them. That was the way that the Arabs used to distribute war booty. That whatever you can get for yourself, that's yours. Finders, keepers. However, when the Muslims, when they acquired war booty at the victory of the Battle of Badr, everyone wondered as to what the rules were with regards to the distribution of booty. Who had a right over it, and who did not have a right over it? So what does this show? That our deen teaches us discipline. What does it teach us? Discipline. That in every situation we cannot just follow whatever we want to, whatever we are used to, but rather we have to do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to do, what Allah has commanded us to do. We have to see what Allah and His Messenger have said with regards to something. We cannot just follow our own desire. We cannot just follow the customs of the society blindly. But in every situation, in every circumstance, we have to see what Allah and His Messenger have commanded. And this is exactly what the Sahaba wondered about, that how is the booty going to be distributed? Imam Ahmad, he recorded that Sa'd ibn Malik, he said that after the victory of the Battle of Badr, I said, O Allah's Messenger, Allah has brought comfort to me today over the mushrikeen. Allah has brought me comfort today. How? Through victory. Over who? Over the mushrikeen. So grant me the sword. Meaning, I have done so well in the battle. We have been victorious and I performed so well in the battle, so please give me the sword. Because he found it in the battlefield. But the Prophet ﷺ said to him, إِنَّ هَذَا السَّيْفَ لَا لَكَ وَلَا لِي ضَعْهُ. This sword is neither yours nor is it mine, so just put it down. So Sa'd ibn Malik said, I put it down. But I said to myself, the Prophet ﷺ might give the sword to another man who did not fight as fiercely as I did. So then, he said that I heard a man calling me from behind, and I said, has Allah revealed something in my case? The Prophet ﷺ said, you asked me to give you the sword, but it is not for me to decide about. However, it has been granted to me by Allah, meaning I can decide about it, and therefore I give it to you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down the ayah, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَنفَالِ قُلِ الْأَنفَالُ لِلَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ. So this verse was revealed about who? Sa'd ibn Malik. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَنفَالِ. They ask you about the bounties, about the booty of war. قُلِ الْأَنفَالُ لِلَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ. Say, the bounties, meaning the war booty, it belongs to who? It is for Allah and the Messenger. يَسْأَلُونَكَ. They ask you. Who asked you? The Sahaba, they asked the Prophet ﷺ about the Anfal, meaning about the division of the booty, as to who deserves it, who has a share in it. And this su'al, this question over here is of istifta, meaning they were seeking a legal verdict. They were seeking a legal verdict, that who deserves the war booty. Why were they so concerned about it? You see, in the battlefield, there were different groups of Sahaba. Every person was appointed at his specific location by the Prophet ﷺ. For example, one group was fighting the disbelievers, right at the forefront. Another was defending the army from behind. They were not fighting in the front. And another group was protecting the Prophet ﷺ. So when the Muslims acquired war booty and it was going to be divided, each group thought that they were more worthy of it than the rest. For example, the fighters said that we should get the booty because we fought at the front. And the defenders, they said we should get it because if we did not defend you, then you would not be able to fight. And the rest of them, they said, we were protecting the Prophet ﷺ, so we should get the war booty. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the following, that يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَنفَالِ قُلْ الْأَنفَالُ لِلَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ. If you look at the word al-anfal, the word is being used over here for war booty. What does it mean? Anfal is the plural of nafal. And nafal is that which is extra. It is more than the fard, more than the wajib, more than that which is mandatory. Just as nafal salah. What is that? Extra salah. It's not sunnah, it's not mandatory, you're just praying. It's a voluntary act of worship. Similarly, nafal sadaqah. It's not zakat, it's not mandatory. It's not sadaqatul fitr, but rather it is nafal sadaqah. So nafal is that which is extra, which is more than that which is mandatory. For example, we learn in Surah Al-Isra, ayah number 79, وَمِنَ اللَّيْلِ فَتَهَجَّدْ بِهِ نَافِلَةً لَكَ. That this was commanded to the Prophet ﷺ, that from part of the night, pray with it, meaning pray in part of the night as additional worship for you. Meaning it's an extra obligation upon you. Nafila. The tahajjud salah was an extra obligation on the Prophet ﷺ. Extra. Not on everybody else. It was extra for him. So يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَنفَالِ. The question is, why is war booty called anfal? For different reasons. First of all, because the purpose of war in Islam is not to gain war booty. The purpose of battle in our deen is not to gain war booty. It is not to amass the resources of other people. That just go and fight other people for no reason. Get a hold of their resources, get a hold of their minerals. This is not the reason, this is not the objective of war in Islam. But rather, the purpose of war in Islam is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if the soldier, meaning the one who goes to fight in the way of Allah, if he does receive some worldly benefit, then that worldly benefit is an extra favor from Allah. It's a bonus. It's not the actual reward. What is it? It's an extra favor, because that was not his objective. His objective is to get the pleasure of Allah. So if by fighting in the way of Allah, he obtains some worldly benefit, that's just a bonus. The actual reward, where will he get it? In the akhirah. In the dunya, whatever a person gets, that is an extra benefit. It's a bonus. And remember that there is nothing in the dunya that can compensate for what a person sacrifices in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether it is his wealth or his time or his life, anything that he sacrifices for the sake of Allah, nothing in this world can make up for it. So if a person does get some worldly benefit, then it is only a bonus. Secondly, it was haram, it was unlawful on the previous nations. We learn that the Bani Israel, even they were to fight in the way of Allah, however, they were not allowed to use or take any of the war booty. So يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَنفَالِ, they ask you about the war booty with regards to its distribution. Who gets a share in it? Who does not get a share in it? Everybody is arguing. The people who were fighting in the front, they say it's their right. The people who were defending, they were saying it's their right. The people who were defending the Prophet ﷺ, they said they were more deserving. So there was a confusion. There was some argument, difference amongst the Sahaba. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the solution. And what was that? That, قُلْ, say, al-anfalu, the anfal are for who? Lillahi, for Allah. And also for who? The Messenger of Allah. قُلِ الْأَنْفَالُ لِلَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ. This is the answer. That You went to war not to get booty, but you went to war to get the pleasure of Allah. Therefore, don't think that this booty is your right. It's not your right. Rather, this booty belongs to who? To Allah and His Messenger. So they will decide as to who gets a share and who does not get a share. And they will divide the booty amongst the people however they deem right. Who? Allah and the Messenger. Therefore, whatever they decide, you have to be pleased with it. Now, apparently it seems as though the Sahaba, they don't have any share in the war booty. قُلِ الْأَنْفَالُ لِلَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ. What does it mean? It's not for you. However, we do learn that in Ayah 40, later on in the surah, the answer is given as to who gets a share in the war booty. So why is this being said that the spoils belong to Allah and His Messenger? For two reasons. First of all, so that people do not fight for wealth. People do not fight for the love of dunya. The love of dunya does not become the purpose of their lives and their efforts. Many times what happens, when children are quarreling over something, for example, two children are saying, this is my pencil. Each one is saying that it's his pencil. Then what does the teacher do? She just takes the pencil away. She's like, okay, it doesn't belong to you. It's no one's. It's not yours, it's not yours. It's mine. What happens? The dispute is ended. And both the kids, they become satisfied that the other person didn't get it. And then what does the teacher do? Depending on what she knows, depending on what she's aware of, she will give the pencil to whomever she wishes. Or she will not give to any of them, if she thinks that that is better. So the reason behind saying قُلْ الْأَنْفَالُ لِلَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ is to end the dispute. That stop arguing, stop disputing, forget arguing. This belongs to who? Allah and His Messenger. And also it has been said, the second reason is that when people, they have the same objective, when they have the same goal, that our goal is to please Allah, our goal is to obey the Messenger, then they are more united. You see, each person has a different role to play in an organization. And if every person begins thinking that his work is more important, his work is better, therefore he can do whatever he wants to, or he has more right, then what's going to happen? There is going to be disunity. Because every person is going to have a different objective. His goal is not the mission of the organization. But what is it? His own personal motive, which is to satisfy himself, or to get the paycheck, or whatever that he wishes. So when people have the same objective, when they have the same goal, that I am here to please Allah, then what happens? People remain united. So قُلِ الْأَنْفَالُ لِلَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ. It belongs to Allah and the Messenger. Become united. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ. So fear Allah. Meaning, O believers, have fear of Allah and do not quarrel over this matter. Do not dispute over this matter. Fear Allah and hand over everything to Allah and His Messenger. وَأَصْلِحُوا. And instead of focusing on who has a share and who does not have a share, what should you do? Aslihu, reform. Aslihu is from the word islah. And what does islah mean? To put things right, to reform the situation. So aslihu, reform, what should you reform? ذَاتَ بَيْنِكُمْ, the relations that are between you all. Reform that which is amongst you all. What does it mean by this? ذَاتَ بَيْنِكُمْ. The word that is the feminine of dhu. And what does dhu mean? Possessor. So that is possessor, that which is in. So that which is in bainikum, between you all, fix that. What is that which is between the people? It's their relationships. It's their affairs. So aslihu dhata bainikum, meaning reform the affairs that are amongst you. Why? So that there is unity. Aslihu dhata bainikum, reform your mutual affairs so that there is unity. amend the relations that you have. And what is that relation? Primarily it is the relation of Islam, of deen. So أَصْلِحُوا ذَاتَ بَيْنِكُمْ, so that you are all united, so that you all have cooperation, friendship. Reform your relations. Because if you don't reform your relations, then you cannot work together. Just imagine, 300 people, very few in number. They go to battle, and they come back, and they begin fighting over money. Isn't it going to affect their work? Isn't it going to affect their efforts? It's going to. So instead of focusing on money, instead of focusing on the fact that your work is better than the other's work, what should you do? Focus on amending, on reforming the matters that are between you all. Focus on good relationships as well. وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ, and obey Allah, وَرَسُولَهُ, and His Messenger. Obey Allah and His Messenger. Concerning what? Concerning the booty, and concerning every matter of amr, and nahi, and qada, and hukm. Meaning every command they give you, every prohibition, every judgment, every ruling, obey Allah and His Messenger. Why? In kuntum mu'mineen, if you're truly believers. If you really have iman, then you must obey Allah and His Messenger. What does it show? That it is a sign of iman, of being a true believer, that a person obeys Allah and His Messenger in every situation. And it is a sign of weakness of iman, or the lack of iman, weakness of iman, when a person does not obey Allah and His Messenger. Rather, he obeys his own desires. And it's the duty of a true believer that he must obey Allah and His Messenger in every situation. So, وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. If you look in this ayah, Allah and His Messenger have been mentioned twice. And both times they have been mentioned together. Why? To show that the decision that comes from the Messenger, the command that he gives, is from who? It is actually from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Obedience to the Messenger means obedience to Allah. And disobedience to the Messenger means disobedience to Allah.
Innama, indeed not but. Al-mu'minuna, the believers.
Indeed, the true believers. And notice the word innama. It's kalima hasr, which limits the meaning. Meaning, the believers are only those. There are many people who claim to be believers, who think that they are believers. But what is the sign of true iman? Who is really a believer? The believers are only those who, alladina, those people who, إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ, when Allah is mentioned, what happens? وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ, their hearts become fearful. Their hearts tremble. Why? Out of fear of Allah. Their hearts tremble out of fear of Allah. Just the mention of Allah makes them fearful. So how about when the command of Allah comes? How about when a prohibition comes? Will they say why? Will they say how? And how come? And why is it like this and why is it like that? No. Because a true believer, the moment he hears about Allah, the moment he hears Allah being mentioned, that's it. His heart trembles and immediately he submits. He forgets the whys and the hows. He only submits at that time. Because wajilat qulubuhum, their hearts tremble with fear. The word wajilat is from the root letters waw, jim, lam. Waw, jim, lam. And wajal is to be afraid. Just imagine you're walking and all of a sudden you see a huge hole in the ground. Just imagine a well that's huge and very deep. It's going to make you very fearful. And your whole body becomes alert. So basically, wajal is such fear in which a person is trembling because of that fear. A shiver of fear runs through the body. A person is awestruck. So wajilat qulubuhum, their hearts tremble with fear. But the question is, what does it mean by إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ, when Allah is mentioned? It could be when Allah, His name is mentioned, or when His wa'id is mentioned, when His warning, His threat is mentioned, or when His hukum is mentioned. the reaction of the believers is that immediately they are struck with fear. Immediately they become fearful. When do you become afraid? When you hear about something that you're afraid of. Isn't it so? For example, if you're afraid of, let's say, a particular person, perhaps a teacher, or let's say the principal, or your manager, your boss, or whoever. The moment you hear them coming, you see them driving in, you see them passing by, immediately what happens? You become fearful. Similarly, someone whom you were ashamed of, maybe you did something wrong in the past, maybe you feel guilty before them. They're mentioned, or they come, or you learn about what they have said, and instantly you're going to become fearful. You're going to become fearful. It causes your heart to tremble. So we learn that when Allah is mentioned, the believers, their hearts tremble with fear. Why? Because they're afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They realize Allah's greatness. They realize their smallness. They realize their sinfulness. So Allah is mentioned and their hearts tremble with fear. We need to ask ourselves, how many times Allah is mentioned? Allah is glorified? Allah's kalam is recited before us? Allah's ayat are read before us? We ourselves read the ayat of Allah, but nothing happens to our heart. Nothing. It doesn't fill with any emotions. Neither fear, nor love, nor humility. Nothing. It's as if nothing happened. Why? It's because we don't have that iman. It's because we don't have that fear of Allah. It's only because we claim that we love Allah. It's only because we claim that we fear Allah. And in reality, we don't. Because if we really feared Allah, if we really had strong iman, then the moment Allah would be mentioned, our hearts would tremble with fear. وَإِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ, and when His verses are recited upon him, زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا, it increases them in iman. This is the sign of a true believer. This is the sign of a true believer. That when the ayat of Allah are recited upon them, they increase in their iman. They increase in their conviction. They are more willing to obey Allah. They are more accepting of the command, because they know it's an ayah of my Lord. It's the kalam of Allah. This is what my Lord said. This is what my Lord commanded. It increases them in iman. They're motivated to obey. They don't say how come or why or it doesn't make sense or it's too difficult. No, this is not their reaction. إِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ, and upon their Lord, يَتَوَكَّلُونَ, they rely. They trust upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They trust upon Allah in all aspects of their lives, with regards to all of their affairs. They hope only from Allah. They don't hope from people. So, in this ayah, the sign of a true believer is mentioned. The signs of a true believer. What are they? That first of all, when Allah is mentioned, the ayat of Allah, it increases them in iman. It increases them in iman. And thirdly, they have tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. And the question is, in the previous ayah, what is mentioned? The Anfal. The Sahaba are concerned about who gets a share of the booty and who doesn't get a share of booty. And what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? That leave the matter to Allah and His Messenger if you're truly believers. And if you're truly believers, check yourself. Do you have these qualities or not? If you don't, you need to improve yourself. You're fighting for wealth? You're fighting for reward? You think you're more deserving of reward? Look at yourself first. Do you really deserve that reward? Are you really true believers? What happens to you when Allah is mentioned? What happens to you when you hear the verses of the Quran? Does it increase you in iman? Do you increase in your obedience? If you don't, then there's a problem. There's a problem. Focus on أَصْلِحُوا ذَاتَ بَيْنِكُمْ and stop arguing about money.